My name is Sharon, and the night I learned that the man I loved considered me disposable was the night my world cracked open. Words can cut deeper than blades, and his words that night carved scars into me I will never forget. We were engaged. I wore his ring every day, twisting it on my finger whenever doubts crept in. He had promised me forever, painted me pictures of a grand life together, spoken of houses, vacations, children. His name was Adrian, and to everyone else he was charm incarnate, confident, polished, the man who seemed to have it all. But I had already seen glimpses of his arrogance, the way he sometimes looked at me as though I were less, the way he enjoyed making little comments at my expense. I ignored them. I told myself that all couples had flaws, that love was about forgiveness. I didn't realize forgiveness was turning into silence, and silence into submission. That Saturday night was supposed to be special. Adrian's colleague was hosting a cocktail party, and he insisted I come with him. "You'll look perfect on my arm," he said, as if I were an accessory instead of a woman. I saved for weeks to buy a deep sapphire dress, simple but elegant, the kind of dress that made me feel like maybe I belonged in his glittering world. The ballroom shimmered with light, laughter rising like smoke through the chandeliers. Men boasted of deals, women compared vacations, couples sparkled with stories of privilege. I clung to Adrian's side, smiling politely, offering handshakes, trying not to show how small I felt in a room like this. He introduced me as his fiancée, and for a while I let myself believe I was part of the dream. Then came the moment that burned itself into my memory. One of his colleagues' wives leaned forward, her glass of champagne glinting under the lights. She looked me up and down slowly, her painted smile slicing across her face. "She's lovely," she said to Adrian. "But don't you think she seems plain for you?" The laughter that followed was sharp and poisonous. My stomach dropped. I waited for Adrian to defend me, to take my hand, to say what every woman deserves to hear, that I was his choice, his partner, his equal. But Adrian smirked. He swirled his glass, tilted his head, and spoke the words that changed everything. "Plain works for now," he said lightly. "But honestly, I could replace her in 24 hours if I wanted." The words crashed over me like cold water. My breath caught in my throat, my glass nearly slipping from my hand. The people around us chuckled, thinking it was harmless banter. But I heard it for what it was, the truth he had kept hidden behind his polished smile. I excused myself with a strained laugh and walked quickly to the restroom. The door closed behind me, and silence wrapped around me like a shroud. I locked myself in and stood in front of the mirror. The woman staring back at me was dressed in sapphire, her makeup flawless, her hair curled perfectly. A fiancée. A woman who had bent herself to fit his world. And yet, to him I was disposable. Replaceable in a single day. My hands gripped the counter until my knuckles whitened. At first came the ache, deep, raw humiliation. My eyes burned with tears I refused to let fall. But then beneath the ache something darker stirred. Fury. I whispered to the mirror, to the reflection of the woman he had mocked. "You think I am disposable. You think I am nothing. I will show you what nothing looks like when it destroys everything you are." That night, as we left the party, Adrian draped his arm casually around me, laughing with friends, acting as though nothing had happened. I stayed silent, smiling faintly, playing my role. But inside, the vow had already taken root. I would not scream. I would not beg. I would not crumble. I would gather proof. I would find allies. I would build a plan so precise, so devastating, that when it struck, it would shatter the image he prized above all, his reputation. And when Adrian finally realized the cost of mocking me, it would not happen in private. It would not happen in whispers. It would happen in the same dazzling light where he once sneered, thinking I was nothing more than a placeholder until something better came along. I walked out of that party on his arm, but I was no longer the same woman. The engagement ring on my finger no longer felt like a promise. It felt like a weapon waiting to be turned. Because the man who told me he could replace me in 24 hours had no idea that within months, my response would not just replace him, it would destroy him. The night of the cocktail party replayed in my mind for days. I heard his voice over and over. I could replace her in 24 hours. The words refused to fade. They clung to me at work, whispered in my ears when I tried to sleep, echoed whenever I glanced at the sapphire dress hanging in my closet. At first, I tried to convince myself he had spoken carelessly, that maybe he was drunk or caught up in bravado showing off to his colleagues. But deep down I knew better. Those words carried the weight of truth. They were not the slip of a tongue, they were the mirror of his soul. Small cracks began to show where once I had only seen charm. Adrian's late nights at the office stretched later. His phone buzzed with messages he never explained. He turned it face down on the table, out of my view, though once he had left it lying around without a second thought. When I asked gentle questions, he brushed me off. "Don't be paranoid, Sharon. You're imagining things." But I wasn't imagining. One evening, I was setting the table for dinner when his phone lit up across the room. A name appeared. Sienna. I had never heard of her. The message preview read, "Friday is perfect. Can't wait." My chest tightened, my breath sharp. When I asked him who she was, Adrian laughed. "A work contact. Don't be ridiculous." He snatched the phone before I could see more and changed the subject. His smile was too quick, his tone too dismissive. I knew a lie when I heard one. The next day, he left for a meeting. Hours passed. I drove to the restaurant we used to frequent on Fridays, a place that once felt like ours. And there he was, seated at a corner table, leaning in close to a woman with long dark hair. She laughed, touching his arm, and I watched him smile in the way he used to smile at me. The ring on my finger felt heavy like a chain. I did not storm inside. I did not create a scene. I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo through the window and left. My hands shook but my face was calm. Proof. The first shard of it. At home I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the picture until my vision blurred. The ache in my chest was almost unbearable, but I remembered the mirror, the vow I had made. I would not collapse. I would not be the woman humiliated quietly while he smirked behind my back. I opened a notebook and wrote, "Adrian. Friday. Restaurant. With Sienna. 7:45 p.m. Proof photo." The first entry in what would become a record. In the days that followed, I watched him more closely. He carried himself differently, as though testing how far he could push me. He came home late, sometimes smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. He left his phone in his pocket, guarding it as though it were a weapon. His patience thinned whenever I spoke. One evening I asked him directly, "Do you still want to marry me?" His eyes flickered. Just for a moment I saw the truth. Then he smiled that polished smile. "Of course. Don't be dramatic." But his words no longer soothed me. They cut me because I knew they were hollow. That night, while he slept, I unlocked his phone with the code I had memorized months before. My hands trembled as I scrolled. Threads of messages with Sienna lit up the screen. "You're so much more exciting. She's too predictable. Soon." The final word seared into me, soon. He was planning it. He was preparing to discard me, just as he had sneered. Not in anger. Not even in secrecy. With calculation. I set the phone down gently, my chest rising and falling in measured breaths. Tears threatened, but I forced them back. My pain was real, but it was not my master. I wrote again in the notebook texts. "Sienna. Plans. Replace me." I looked at the ring on my hand, its diamond catching the faint light of the lamp. It no longer sparkled with promise. It glinted like a blade. Because now I had proof that Adrian's words were not just arrogance. They were prophecy. He truly believed he could replace me in 24 hours. What he did not know was that in those same 24 hours, I had already begun building the plan that would replace him instead. After that night with Adrian's phone in my hands, something inside me changed. I was no longer the woman begging to be seen, waiting for scraps of affection. I was a witness, a recorder, a strategist. His arrogance had opened the door, and now I was walking straight through it with clear eyes. The notebook on my nightstand became my ally. Every page filled with times, dates, places. Every lie he told was written down in ink. I noted when he said he was working late, but the office line went unanswered. I recorded when he left the house in a pressed suit for meetings, yet returned with the scent of a woman's perfume clinging to him. He did not know that silence was not my surrender. It was my surveillance. On a Thursday evening, Adrian claimed he was attending a networking dinner. I followed him from a distance, my heart pounding but my face calm behind the wheel. He arrived at a hotel, not a restaurant. I parked down the street and waited. 30 minutes later, I saw Sienna step out of a taxi, her dress glittering under the streetlight. She walked inside without hesitation. My camera captured the moment. Another entry for the notebook. It wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about building an unshakable foundation of truth. Adrian loved his image, his reputation as the golden man with everything. When I destroyed him, I wanted no room for denial. I learned to check receipts left carelessly in his pockets. One showed champagne and dinner for two at a rooftop bar I had never visited. Another revealed a jewelry purchase I had never received. I photographed each one, cataloged them in a hidden folder on my laptop, and wrote them in the notebook. I even began recording his words. When he brushed me off with arrogance, when he hinted I should learn my place, I would press record on my phone from my pocket. His voice, dripping with disdain, became evidence. But perhaps the most damning proof came from his own pride. Adrian loved to talk. He loved to brag to friends when he thought I was out of earshot. One night, I returned home early and heard him on the phone in his study. His voice carried down the hall. "She's convenient for now," he laughed. "But you're right, if I really wanted to, I could swap her out tomorrow. Women line up for men like me. Sharon should be grateful I've kept her this long." My nails dug into my palms until crescents of pain grounded me. I lifted my phone and recorded every word. Later, I listened to the clip again and again, the bile rising in my throat. It hurt, but it also hardened me. Each cruel phrase was another brick in the wall I was building between us, a wall that would soon become his prison. I shared none of this with Adrian. When he came home, I greeted him with the same quiet smile, the same patience he mistook for weakness. I cooked dinners, nodded at his excuses, played the role of fiancé as if nothing had changed. He thought he was in control. But every time he lied, I added another line to the notebook, another file to the folder, another thread to the net I was weaving. I also started watching Sienna. On social media, her posts glimmered with coded pride. Photos of hotel lobbies, champagne glasses clinking, captions like "the best things are worth the wait." She never mentioned Adrian by name, but I knew. And so would anyone else once I connected the dots. Screenshots joined the growing archive. The weight of the evidence grew heavier, but so did my resolve. I no longer saw myself as the victim of a cruel remark. I was the woman preparing the truth that would strip Adrian of everything he thought untouchable. One night, sitting at the kitchen table where I once cried over his words, I looked at the spread before me. Photos, receipts, recordings, screenshots, notes. Proof so undeniable it would silence every smug laugh, every dismissive shrug. I whispered into the quiet, "This isn't about replacing me. This is about exposing you." And for the first time since the cocktail party, I smiled. Because soon Adrian would learn that the fiancée he mocked as plain and replaceable had turned into the one woman who could dismantle his entire world. Piece by piece, lie by lie, until nothing remained of the man who thought he was untouchable. Carrying the truth alone made me strong, but it also made me heavy. Every time I looked at the growing files on my laptop, every time I flipped through my notebook filled with dates and betrayals, the weight pressed harder on my chest. I needed someone I could trust. Someone who would not dismiss me, who would not tell me to forgive, who would not say, "At least he hasn't left you yet." That someone was Marissa, my oldest friend. We had known each other since college, and though our lives had taken different paths, she had always been the one voice that cut through noise. I invited her to my apartment one evening, my heart pounding as I spread the evidence across the kitchen table, the same table where I once cried over Adrian's words. She stared at the photos, the receipts, the recorded messages, the screenshots. For a long time she said nothing. Then she looked at me, her eyes blazing. "Sharon, this isn't a man planning a wedding. This is a man planning your replacement." The words stung, but I nodded. "I know. And I can't just leave quietly. I won't let him walk away smiling while I look like the fool who couldn't keep her fiancé." Marissa leaned forward, her voice sharp with conviction. "Then don't. Use this. Build something so undeniable that when he falls, it's his own arrogance that buries him." Her fire lit mine. Together we sorted the files, labeling and categorizing. Marissa was meticulous. She had a talent for organization that I had always admired. She pointed out patterns I hadn't noticed, weekends that always coincided with Sienna's posts, receipts that connected with his supposed work dinners, Lies repeated in almost identical words. Patterns prove intent, she said. And intent proves betrayal. But friendship alone would not be enough. I needed legal protection, someone who could make sure Adrian couldn't twist the story against me when the time came. So I reached out to Daniela, a lawyer I had met through a work seminar months earlier. She specialized in family law and contracts. When I told her everything, she listened silently, her pen gliding across a legal pad. "Sharon," she said finally, "you have enough here to not only expose him but to protect yourself from retaliation. If he tries to smear your name or deny his actions, this evidence will stand. I suggest we begin drafting a plan quietly." "What kind of plan?" I asked. "One that keeps you safe," she replied. "You want revenge and I respect that. But you also need to ensure you walk away with dignity, not damage. He will fight dirty. Men like this always do." Her words settled into me like steel. Revenge wasn't about screaming or throwing things. It was about building walls he could not climb, traps he could not avoid, and truth he could not escape. Over the next weeks, Marissa and Daniela became my pillars. Marissa helped me refine the timeline, sharpening it into a narrative so clear that even strangers would see the betrayal without question. Daniela quietly set up legal protections. She coached me on what to say, what not to say, how to avoid giving Adrian any hint that I knew. All the while, Adrian strutted through life as though nothing had changed. He kissed my cheek before leaving for work trips, sent me casual texts during dinners with Sienna, even spoke about the wedding plans as though they were still real. He believed my silence was ignorance. He had no idea it was preparation. One night, as Marissa and I sat surrounded by files, she looked at me seriously. "When you do this, Sharon, you can't hesitate. If you expose him halfway, he'll spin it. You need to strike when the stage is set, when the audience is watching, when there's no escape." I thought of the cocktail party, of his colleagues laughing at me, of his voice declaring he could replace me in 24 hours. My chest tightened but my resolve hardened. Then I'll make sure the stage is crowded. I'll make sure the light is bright. And when it happens, he'll understand what it feels like to be stripped of worth in front of everyone. Because now I wasn't just a fiancée with broken trust. I was a woman with allies, with legal protection, with a growing arsenal of truth. And soon, Adrian would discover that the silence he mistook for weakness was the silence of a storm waiting to break. We sat around my kitchen table like conspirators. The room was lit by a single lamp. Files lay open. The notebook with his words lay open. Marissa brewed coffee and moved papers with steady hands. Daniela made notes on a legal pad with an economy of motion. I watched them both and felt something I had not felt in weeks. Clarity. We needed a plan that was precise. Not loud. Not messy. Precise. Adrian thrived on spectacle. He believed appearance was everything. He polished his image and the world admired the shine. So we would take his polish away. We would reveal the rust beneath. Daniela started with the law. "We must lock the facts," she told me. "Dates. Times. Receipts. Metadata from the photos. Timestamps on messages. Make each piece speak for itself. We file a preservation notice. We keep the originals safe. Do not broadcast until we control the narrative." She wrote down the legal steps and underlined them. Her voice was flat and fierce. It steadied me. Marissa was thinking about the audience. "People will believe what they already want to believe," she said. "If we leak raw anger, they will call it vindictive. If we present calm evidence, they will see injustice. We need a stage where he cannot control the spin. A place he values. His circle. His peers. Make him accountable where his image matters." We mapped targets. A gala at his firm. The engagement party he had scheduled for close friends. The newsletter that his brother edited. Wherever he shined, there we would shine truth. We would do it in public and we would do it with proof so tight the only response left to him would be silence. Our counterplan had 5 parts. 1. Preserve and verify. Daniela arranged for certified copies. She contacted an independent digital forensics expert to validate the timestamps on the photos I had taken. She filed a confidentiality request so no one could compel release of records without our notice. The law became an engine for truth. 2. Witnesses and statements. Marissa began quietly reaching out to people who might corroborate what I had seen. A bartender who remembered a woman leaving late with Adrian. A driver who had notes. A colleague who had heard him boast. We collected small statements. On paper. Under oath if necessary. 3. Public context. We would choose an event where Adrian expected applause. He loved to be admired by his peers. We would take that room and turn it into a courtroom of the world. But we would not storm the stage with accusations. We would present a dossier. Hand it to trusted journalists first. Let the press verify. Let the facts be repeated by neutral voices. 4. Financial pressure. Daniela found a thread in his accounts. Small transfers. Charges to guests. A pattern of support for Sienna that could be traced. We would freeze access to anything he moved without authorization. If he attempted to hide money or assets, the legal net would snap. 5. The personal touch. Marissa insisted I keep my dignity. Nothing humanizes you like calm, she said. People sympathize with composure. Let him be the angry one. Let him be the liar. You will be the woman who kept her head and proved the truth. Elena, my sister in spirit, agreed and volunteered to be at my side at every public step. We rehearsed the reveal in the living room. Daniela projected the timeline onto my wall. Dates slid by in neat rows. Evidence matched to statements. Each link closed a possible excuse. We practiced short, quiet phrases I could say to cameras. I did not want to cry. I did not want to yell. I wanted the truth to land clean. There were hard choices. Daniela warned me about risk. If you move too soon, he will smear you. If you move too late, he will vanish into another life and the moment will be lost. She recommended a narrow window. A public dinner he attended in 3 weeks. Enough time to gather more proof. Not enough time for him to retreat. Marissa and I began to choreograph the narrative. She would hand a packet to a journalist we trusted. Elena would be at the front row to catch the first reaction. Daniela would file our petitions in the morning. So the legal scaffolding stood before anyone spoke. I would stand and speak only if necessary. Mostly I would let paper do the work. We also planned for failure. Daniela put a contingency clause into our plan. If Adrian tried to expose my private notes or claim invasion of privacy, we would show that all evidence came from public interactions or from his own messages. We would never break the law to get proof. The victory had to be clean. Every night I added small items to the file. A receipt. A message. A voice note. Each one was another brick. The pile grew into something terrifyingly beautiful. A monument to truth. The strangest thing was how ordinary the preparation felt. I made tea. I printed another timestamp. I wrote a simple sentence to journalists. We have evidence that will be made available to the press under verification. Short and calm. No venom. No begging. On the last rehearsal night, I stood in front of the mirror and put on the sapphire dress again. The fabric fell differently now. It did not feel like armor. It felt like a uniform for someone who would not be dismissed any longer. We set the date. 3 weeks from the night I first heard the words. 3 weeks to finish the fortress. 3 weeks to make sure the room he loved would be the room where he could no longer hide. And then 2 days later, as I updated the timeline, my phone chimed with a message that stopped the air in my lungs. It was from Adrian. 4 words. We need to talk. Tonight. He did not want words in a crowded room. He wanted them alone. He wanted the 24 hours to begin. I looked at the file on my lap and felt the floor move. He had called my bluff whether he knew it or not. If I walked into his talk unprepared, everything could collapse. If I refused, he might spin the conversation into something else. The clock was ticking. When Adrian's message lit my screen, we need to talk. Tonight. My stomach clenched. He had never phrased it like that before. No smiley face, no arrogance in text, just blunt words. For a moment I wondered if he had sensed the shift in me. If the mask I wore had cracked somewhere and given me away. I called Marissa immediately. He wants to meet. Tonight. What do I do? Her voice was calm but firm. Do not go alone. If you must meet him, choose a public place. Keep your answers short. Let him talk. We will watch and record. Do not reveal your hand. Daniela echoed the warning. He might suspect something, or he might simply want to test how far he can push. Either way, Sharon, the danger is real. Remember, your silence is your strength. Do not let him bait you. We arranged a plan. Marissa would sit 2 tables away, pretending to read. Daniela would wait in a car outside. Elena, ever loyal, insisted on being there too, ready to come inside if needed. I was not going to walk into his trap unguarded. That night I wore the simplest outfit I could find, jeans and a blouse. No statement dress, no makeup that said war. Just me, stripped of glamour because I wanted him to underestimate me one last time. The cafe he chose was quiet, nearly empty. He sat near the back, scrolling his phone, his posture too casual. When he looked up, his eyes narrowed slightly as though searching for cracks. "Sharon," he said, standing to kiss my cheek. I let him, though every muscle in me stiffened. We sat. For a long moment he said nothing. He just studied me, sipping his drink. Then he leaned forward. "You've been different lately." I forced a soft smile. "Have I?" He tilted his head. "Yes. Less clingy. Less emotional. Almost like you've accepted what we are." His lips curved. "Which is good because things are changing." My chest tightened, but I kept my eyes steady. "Changing?" He chuckled, as though I were a child who didn't understand. "I've been thinking." We rushed into the engagement. "I'm not saying it's over. But I need freedom, Sharon. Options. You understand, right? A man like me can't be tied down too soon." The words were almost crueler than the ones at the party, because now he wasn't performing for others. This was private. Honest. The arrogance didn't need witnesses anymore. I stayed silent, only nodding faintly. Encouraged, he leaned closer. "You're smart enough to know you can't compete with what I can get. But if you stay calm, if you don't make a scene, I'll make sure you're taken care of. You'll always have a place. Just not as the only one." The bile rose in my throat. He was offering me scraps, as though I should be grateful to orbit around his self-importance. I whispered, "Is that really what you think of me?" He smiled, sipping his drink again. "Sharon, I could replace you in 24 hours if I wanted. I told you that already. I'm only being generous by keeping you close." I lowered my gaze, forcing tears into my eyes. Not real ones, but ones he would believe. I whispered, "I understand." His chest expanded, proud of his cruelty. He believed I had accepted it. After a few more empty words, he left, promising to talk more soon. When he was gone, Marissa joined me at the table, her hands shaking. "Sharon, you recorded that, right?" I pulled out my phone and pressed play. His voice, clear and sharp, spilled into the quiet cafe. "I could replace you in 24 hours if I wanted. I'm only being generous by keeping you close." Marissa exhaled slowly. "That's it. That's the nail in the coffin." But Daniela, waiting outside, had news that chilled me. She showed me an email forwarded from a colleague at Adrian's firm. Adrian had booked the ballroom for a private event in just 2 weeks. The invitation list was full of his colleagues, clients, and family. The title of the event, Celebration of Success. Daniela's jaw tightened. He's planning something big, either to flaunt his new relationship or to formally end things with you in front of everyone. He wants to control the narrative before you can. The pivot was clear. Adrian wasn't just arrogant. He was preparing to humiliate me publicly, to replace me exactly as he had promised, and to do it on his own stage. I looked at the notebook in my bag, the recordings, the photos. My voice was steady when I said, "Then we won't wait for his stage. We'll turn it into ours." Because Adrian believed he was setting the scene for his triumph, but in truth, he was building the perfect stage for his downfall. And I would make sure every single guest watched it happen. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, the night of Adrian's celebration of success. His name was etched on banners, his photo splashed across the digital screens at the entrance. Guests arrived in suits and gowns, clinking glasses and offering their praise. To them, he was the golden man. Handsome, ambitious, untouchable. He wanted a stage to prove his dominance, to parade his new chapter. He thought I would be the discarded piece, quietly forgotten. What he didn't know was that I had been preparing for this exact moment. I entered quietly, wearing the same sapphire dress from the cocktail party, the one he had seen as too plain, too replaceable. Tonight it would shine brighter than any gown in the room. Marissa flanked me on one side, Elena on the other. Daniela stood near the back, carrying the legal folder that held every receipt, every recording, every piece of evidence that tied Adrian to his betrayal. Adrian spotted me instantly. His smile faltered for half a second, then stretched wider, smug and mocking. He walked over, kissed my cheek for show, and whispered in my ear, "Brave of you to come, Sharon. But you should know by tomorrow, everyone will understand why you're no longer in my life." I smiled steady. "I know," I whispered back. The evening began with speeches. Adrian stood on the stage, glass of champagne raised high, boasting about his career milestones and future ventures. His words oozed charm, but my eyes stayed on him with the calm of someone who held his fate in her hands. Then came the moment. As applause faded, Marissa signaled to me. Daniela stepped forward, handing discreet packets to two journalists seated in the front row. They flipped them open, brows furrowing, eyes widening as they scanned. I walked to the stage. The room hushed. Adrian's smile froze. "Good evening," I said, my voice carrying clear and steady. "My name is Sharon. Many of you know me as Adrian's fiancée." I paused, letting the word hang in the air. "But tonight, you deserve to know the truth about the man standing before you." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Adrian laughed nervously, stepping toward me. "Sharon, this isn't the time." I lifted a small speaker and pressed play. His voice filled the room, recorded with crystal clarity. I could replace her in 24 hours if I wanted. I'm only being generous by keeping her close. The room erupted in whispers, sharp and shocked. Faces turned to Adrian, searching for denial, for explanation. I continued. "For months Adrian lied to me and to all of you. He promised a future while courting another woman behind my back. He told me I was disposable, a placeholder. But I am not disposable. And tonight you will hear the proof." Daniela stepped forward, distributing the documents to key guests, colleagues, investors, family members. Photographs of Adrian with Sienna. Receipts for dinners and jewelry. Screenshots of texts where he mocked me, mocked all of us who believed in him. Gasps turned to outrage. A colleague muttered, "I knew something was off." An investor shook his head, handing the file back with disgust. Adrian's mother, seated near the front, covered her mouth in horror. Adrian's mask cracked. His smile vanished, his face pale and tight. "This is slander," he shouted. "She's bitter, she's lying." Another recording played, his own words again. "She should be grateful I've kept her this long." Silence crashed over the ballroom. His arrogance echoed back at him, undeniable. I lifted my chin. "You said you could replace me in 24 hours, Adrian. But tonight, in less than 24 seconds, I have replaced your image with the truth." Applause broke, not for him but for me. It began with Marissa and Elena, then spread through the room. Some guests stood. Others simply glared at Adrian with eyes colder than ice. He tried to speak, but no words came. The weight of evidence crushed every excuse before it could form. I turned, walked down from the stage, and felt the eyes of the room follow me, not with pity but with respect. For the first time since his cruel words at the cocktail party, I no longer felt small. I felt infinite. But as I reached the exit, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. For words, this isn't over yet. The ballroom no longer sparkled. The chandeliers still glowed, the champagne still bubbled in glasses, but the air was different. It was heavier, thick with whispers and judgment. Adrian's perfect stage had turned into his prison, and the audience he wanted to impress had become his jury. I stood at the exit, my phone buzzing in my hand. This isn't over yet. The words on the screen tightened my chest, but I slipped the phone back into my purse. I had no time for shadows. The fallout was happening right here, right now. "Sharon." Adrian's voice cut through the noise. He stumbled down from the stage, face flushed, suit askew. He tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. "Ladies and gentlemen, please. You're not really going to believe this circus, are you? She's desperate. She's bitter. She's clinging because she knows I was going to end it." But the crowd wasn't with him. Not anymore. One of his colleagues crossed his arms. "We've heard your voice, Adrian. Twice. That wasn't bitterness. That was arrogance." A woman in the front row lifted the documents Daniela had handed out. "These receipts have your name, your card, your signature. Are we supposed to believe she forged them all? Adrian's eyes darted, searching for allies but found none. Even the people who once laughed at his jokes looked away now. His mother stood, her face pale. Adrian, tell me this isn't true. He froze. No words came. The silence was louder than any confession. Marissa moved closer to my side, her voice low. He's unraveling. Stay calm. Let him destroy himself. Adrian turned on me then, desperation flashing in his eyes. You planned this. You wanted to humiliate me. Do you think anyone will still respect you after this stunt? I faced him steady. Respect isn't built on lies, Adrian. It's built on truth. And the truth is, you humiliated yourself. I just handed you the mirror. A ripple of applause spread through the room, quiet at first, then growing. Guests began clapping, some nodding at me, others shaking their heads at him. The sound wrapped around me like armor. Adrian tried one last time, raising his voice. She's nothing without me. Nothing. She. Another recording played. Daniela, calm and prepared, had queued it up on her phone. Adrian's voice filled the room again. She should be grateful I've kept her this long. The applause cut sharper now. Some guests booed. One man muttered, "Pathetic." Adrian's face twisted, rage overtaking the mask he had worn for years. He stormed toward me, but Elena stepped between us, her voice firm. Don't you dare. Not one more step. Security moved quickly, guiding him back. For the first time, Adrian was the one restrained while I stood free. The rest of the night blurred. Journalists approached me, asking for comment. I gave them the same simple words. The truth is all I wanted. And tonight you saw it. Investors and colleagues slipped away, some muttering about reputation, others whispering apologies to me. His empire, the image he had built, was collapsing in real time. Yet even as he was escorted out, Adrian's eyes found mine. Cold, burning, promising more. The message on my phone echoed in my mind. This isn't over yet. Back in the parking lot, Marissa squeezed my arm. You did it, Sharon. You won. Daniela frowned. Not yet. Men like him don't accept defeat quietly. Be ready. Tomorrow he'll try another angle, maybe the press, maybe the law, maybe lies. Tonight was the reveal. Tomorrow will be the counterattack. I looked up at the ballroom, where laughter had turned to judgment, where Adrian's arrogance had crumbled in front of everyone he valued. For the first time in months I felt light, strong, unbreakable. But I also knew Daniela was right. The fallout wasn't finished. It had only begun. Because while Adrian had lost the room tonight, tomorrow he would try to win the world back. And I would have to be ready to face him not just as a fiancée betrayed, but as a woman defending her victory against a man who refused to stay buried. The morning after the ballroom felt like waking into another life. My phone buzzed nonstop on the nightstand, screen glowing with notifications. Headlines covered every angle. Fiancé exposes Adrian Cole at celebration of success. Recording reveals arrogant betrayal. 24 hours to replace her? She replaced him instead. I sat up slowly, the sunlight spilling across my apartment, and opened the first article. It was my words, his words, the audio clips Daniela had verified, the photos, the receipts. Everything was there, printed in black and white. Adrian had always lived for his reputation, for the polished image of perfection. And now the image was crumbling before the eyes of the world. But the day was not mine alone. Adrian fought back quickly. By noon his statement appeared online. These accusations are exaggerated. My former fiancée misunderstood jokes taken out of context. I wish her well, but I will not let bitterness tarnish my success. He tried to sound calm, controlled. But the comments beneath told another story. We heard your voice, Adrian. That wasn't a joke. So every woman you meet is replaceable? Good luck with that. She kept receipts. Literally. Sit down. Marissa called, her voice gleeful. Sharon, the public isn't buying his spin. You should see the threads. People are calling you brave. They're saying you gave every humiliated woman a voice. Elena texted a screenshot of a trending hashtag. Hashtag 24 hours of respect. Thousands of women were posting their own stories of being belittled or discarded, turning my pain into a collective roar. I stared at the screen, stunned. I had only wanted to expose Adrian. I hadn't expected to spark something larger. Still, not everyone was supportive. Some tabloids ran with Adrian's angle, calling me vengeful and calculating. My inbox filled with messages. Half were from strangers thanking me for speaking. Half were from trolls echoing Adrian's cruelty. But even the negative attention felt different now. It wasn't silence. It wasn't shame. It was proof that my voice carried. Daniela came by with fresh coffee and updates. His lawyer sent me a cease and desist this morning. He's claiming you defamed him. She set the letter down and smiled faintly. But they have no case. Everything you released was factual. Verified. They're bluffing. I breathed easier. So he's cornered. Not cornered, she said. Wounded. And wounded men thrash hardest. He may try one more desperate move. By evening, Adrian's desperation showed. A gossip blog posted photos of him with Sienna, labeling her the new fiancée. The caption read, "Adrian moves on. Proves he can replace Sharon in record time." For a moment my chest tightened. It was almost laughable, almost pathetic. He was performing his arrogance again, clinging to the very narrative that had destroyed him. But then I read the comments beneath the article. This just proves Sharon was right. 24 hours on the dot. He made her case for her. Imagine being proud of this. Adrian hadn't rebuilt his reputation. He had set fire to it himself. That night, I sat with Marissa and Elena in my apartment. We scrolled together, watching the world respond. Elena squeezed my hand. You know what's happening, right? You didn't just win. You ended him. But Daniela shook her head. Careful. He still has resources. He may try lawsuits, he may try smear campaigns. Don't assume silence yet. Prepare for one last push. I leaned back, staring at the sapphire dress draped over a chair. It shimmered under the lamp, no longer a symbol of humiliation, but of war fought and won. I don't care what he tries, I said softly. He told me I was nothing. But look, now it's his voice drowning, not mine. Still, as the night deepened, a new message landed in my inbox from an unknown address. The subject line was chillingly simple. You haven't seen the last of me. The email subject line, you haven't seen the last of me, sat in my inbox like a dark stain. For a moment the old fear stirred, the fear of his arrogance, of his control. But when I opened the message there was nothing inside. No threats, no words. Just emptiness. And I realized that was the truest picture of Adrian, now empty. He tried to lash out in the days that followed. He posted carefully staged photos with Sienna, pretending their relationship was flawless. He sent out statements claiming he had moved on with dignity. But the world had already seen too much. His words were met with mockery, his photos with ridicule. Every move he made only reminded people of the arrogance that destroyed him. Meanwhile, my life began to feel lighter. The sapphire dress no longer hung in my closet like a scar. I had it framed, glass over fabric, not as a reminder of humiliation but of transformation. It was the uniform I wore the night I stood up, the night I proved that silence was not weakness but strategy. Marissa remained my anchor, reminding me that friendship can be stronger than betrayal. Elena's pride in me softened wounds I didn't even know I carried. Daniela closed the final legal door, ensuring that Adrian had no ground left to attack. They weren't just my allies, they were the family I chose, the ones who believed in me when the man I loved called me disposable. And me? I wasn't the same woman who once stood in a glittering room waiting for his approval. I was someone else now. Stronger. Sharper. A woman who learned that revenge is not always fire and fury. It can be calm, deliberate, and devastatingly precise. One evening, weeks later, I walked past the same cafe where Adrian had told me I was lucky. He kept me close. I stopped at the window, staring at the table where I had once sat trembling. Then I turned and kept walking, head high, because I no longer carried his voice inside me. His sneer had become nothing more than an echo, and echoes can't hurt you when you're already out of the cave. And here is the truth I want you to remember. You may be mocked, dismissed, even told you are replaceable. But no one can define your worth except you. The people who treat you as nothing give you the greatest gift of all, the chance to rise without them, to rise so high they can never follow. Adrian told me he could replace me in 24 hours. He was right about one thing. 24 hours is all it takes to change everything. 24 hours to gather proof. 24 hours to build resolve. 24 hours to turn humiliation into power. Now, when I look back, I don't see a woman who was discarded. I see the woman who destroyed the man who thought she could be replaced. This was my story. If you have ever been belittled, betrayed, or told you were nothing, let my journey remind you. Silence is not surrender, and patience is not weakness. It is the calm before the storm. And when your storm comes, make sure it leaves no doubt. Subscribe for more stories where betrayal meets justice, where love turns to revenge, and where women like us rise stronger than ever.